Hello, Pre-AP Geometry students. This is some homework help on your page 186 assignment. I pulled some problems I thought you might need some help with. Starting with number 14. It says a pilot traveling at a constant speed flies 100 miles by 2:30 p.m. and 475 miles by 5 p.m. And then we're to graph the line that represents the pilot's distance flown and then find the meaning of the slope of that line. So let's start with the graphing part, okay? So we're going to make a graph here where how far he's traveled, the number of miles will depend on how fast he's going, or I'm sorry, will depend on how much time has gone by. So we'll let the x-axis represent the number of hours, okay? So let's see, he travels 100 miles by 2:30 and 475 miles by 5 o'clock. So I'm going to put some tick marks on here that represent hours, all right? And then put some tick marks here that represent every 100 miles. So this would be 100 miles, 200 miles, etc. All right, so we need to, when we graph a point, of course, we need an ordered pair. So our ordered pair, we'll have two of them, okay, will be represented by an x-axis, an x value and a y value. The x value being a number of hours that have gone by. So after 2.5 hours, he travels 100 miles. That'll be our y value. And in this ordered pair tells us that after 5 hours, he will have traveled 475 miles. So I'm going to roughly put where those points would be on our graph. Let's see, 2.5, 100. So I'm going to go to the right, 1, 2.5, and then up 100. Okay. And then I'm going to put a point at 5, 475. So go to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then up. Let's see, hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4, this would be 500, so I need to go right below that tick mark. Again, this is kind of a rough draft. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, he's gone 475 miles, okay? And then I'm going to leave it to you to draw that line. Since I'm not drawing a scale, it should start here at the origin, because after 0 hours, he should have traveled 100. Sorry about the bell, guys. Sorry about that. He should have traveled, after 0 hours, he's traveled 0 miles, right? So I'm not going to embarrass myself by drawing a bad line. You can do that on your paper, but that's what the line would look like. All right, so we've got that down. We've got we've graphed the line. Now, find and interpret the slope. Well, I'm just going to talk about that a little bit. Remember, to find slope, we take a ratio of the difference in y values to the difference in x values. So I will leave it to you to use this formula on these points to find a slope. So you will have found the slope. Then the next thing you need to do is interpret that slope. Okay, so to figure out an interpretation, remember, slope will be a ratio. You'll have a number on top and a number on the bottom. Look at your graph. Remember, your vertical axis represents miles and number of miles. Your horizontal axis represents number of hours. So just think about that when you go to come up with a meaning for what the slope, what this ratio represents. All right, let's move on to number 18. I always get a lot of questions about this problem. Number 18 says a point on a river has an elevation of about 1,150 meters above sea level. The length of the river from that point to where it enters the sea is about 2,400 kilometers. Sorry. Find and interpret the slope of the river. Okay, so let's think about this. So we have a beginning point, okay, and then the river goes along. Oops. Ooh, okay, so there's our river and an ending point. Now, if you think about these as points on a coordinate plane, they need to have an x-axis and a y-axis, all right? So let's see. It looks to me like we're going to let the sea level, how far above sea level the water is, depend on how many kilometers we have traveled. So we're going to come up with two ordered pairs that will look like this. The first number will represent a number of kilometers. The x value, or the dependent value, will be how many meters above sea level. Let's see, above sea level the water is. Okay, so looking at the problem again, It says, at a point on a river, well, let's just let that be our beginning point. Sorry about the bell. At 0 kilometers, okay, when the water has traveled 0 kilometers, it's 1,150 meters above sea level, okay, and then it starts traveling its way to the sea, and after 2,400 kilometers, okay, what does it say? Whoops. After 2,400 kilometers, let's see, the length of where it enters, that's where it enters the sea. So where it enters the sea, that would be at sea level. Okay, so how many meters above sea level would that be? That would be 0. All right, so you're going to use those two ordered pairs to find the slope. Use your slope formula, find the slope, and then as you interpret that, okay, you'll interpret it as, again, think of the ratio, rise over run. Rise would be the change in sea level. Run would be how many kilometers it has traveled. So just think about that ratio and see if you can come up with an interpretation for that. All right, and then we're going to move on and take a look at number 26. Number 26 is a multiple choice problem, but I'm glad I'm going to do this problem because I just want to remind you that the multiple choice problems in the book are really good, but your answer shouldn't just be a letter, okay, one of the choices. You need to show some work and see how you came up with your answer choice. So number 26 says we have a line AB that's perpendicular to a line CD, and then we're given the coordinates of some points that lie on those lines. And then it says, which are the possible values of x and y? All right, so let's talk about perpendicular lines for a moment, and let's think about their slopes. Remember, if two lines are perpendicular, then their slopes are opposite reciprocals of each other. So since I know the coordinates of A and B, let's go ahead and find the slope of the line that goes through A and B. So I'm going to take the difference in y values on top. That would be -2 minus 3. -2 minus 3 on top. And then on the bottom, the difference in x values, that would be 4 minus 1. So we would get, let's see, -2 minus 3 more would be -5. And then on the bottom, 4 minus 1 is 3. So the slope of the line that passes through points A and B is -5/3. But we want to think about the slope of CD, which is perpendicular to line AB. So a perpendicular slope would be the slope that is the opposite reciprocal of this one. So we're going to flip it over and change the sign. So that would be +3/5. Okay, so we have this point C. We have the coordinates of point C on line CD. We don't know the coordinates of D, okay? But we can use the slope formula and the slope to figure that out. All right, now, notice that it says which are the possible values of x and y. So we may have to do this two different ways. So I'm going to do it one way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the slope of line CD. Line CD would have a slope of 3/5. Remember, it's the opposite reciprocal of the slope of line AB. Now, how do we find slope again? Difference in y's on top. So that would be y minus 1 on top. Y minus 1 on top, and on the bottom, difference in x's, so that would be x minus 6. All right, so now let's figure out what x and y would have to be in this case. Well, on the top, if y minus 1 is the same thing as 3, doesn't y have to be 4? All right, so y would be 4 in this case, and if x minus 6 is 5, what would x have to be? X would have to be 11. So now I'm going to go looking for some answer choices to see if there's an answer choice that has x 11 and y 4. And if you look at all 4 answer choices, none of them work. All right, so it says which are the possible values. So let's think of this another way. What if we did the problem like this? The slope of line CD is 3/5. Let's take the difference in y's and the difference in x's the other way. 1 minus y on top and 6 minus x on the bottom. All right, I'm going to leave it up to you to solve those two equations. If you need to write them out, like the top, you might want to write 3 is equal to 1 minus y. Solve that equation. And then for the bottom, write 5 is equal to 6 minus x. Solve those two equations and see if then you can find an answer choice up here.